None of us are ever truly fine. We only learn how to live almost fine with a life that has never really begun. Every morning, we wake up, pull aside the old curtain, see the same familiar light pour through the window, and think everything is still the same. It's strange, that feeling of being safe yet tired. We know we are breathing, we are living, but we're no longer sure whether we're moving forward or just repeating each day mechanically. The coffee cup still sits in the same corner, the same bitter taste. The clock on the wall keeps ticking time away, but inside, a part of us stopped moving long ago. There are mornings when we sit and stare at ourselves in the mirror, that gaze no longer eager, no longer filled with desire. It's the look of someone waiting for something they cannot even name. Sometimes, it's change. Sometimes, a miracle. But most often, it's simply a quiet feeling that there must be something more than this. We once dreamed of another life, bright, free, meaningful. But over time, that dream got tucked away in a drawer somewhere in our mind, lying beside unfinished plans and promises of someday. And someday keeps drifting endlessly away. The scariest thing is not failure. It's our own indifference toward ourselves. A gentle kind of indifference that makes us stop questioning, stop risking, stop truly living. It doesn't scream. It doesn't hurt. It just softly lulls us to sleep with familiar words. Take it slow. When the time is right. Not yet. And while we wait for the right time, life keeps passing by. Day after day, month after month, year after year. Silent, steady, and cold. Have you ever wondered why some people dare to change? Dare to start over from zero? While most of us choose to stay still? Is it because they're fearless? Or because they know something we're afraid to admit? That waiting never saves anyone. Waiting is the most subtle way to lose yourself. Every time you say maybe tomorrow, you take one more step away from the life you could have lived. I've met many people like that. Intelligent, talented, ambitious, yet trapped inside their own comfort zone. They read books about change, watch hundreds of motivational videos, nod because it all makes sense, and then do nothing. They think they just need more time. But in truth, what they need is not time, but courage. Courage to begin before they feel ready. Courage to move even when they still tremble inside. The truth is, you are not lacking opportunities. You are lacking action. Life is always sending invitations, a door, an idea, a chance encounter, but we ignore them, believing it's not the right time. We wait until we have more money, until work is stable, until we feel better. Yet that until never arrives, because life doesn't wait for us to be ready before it begins. It only needs us to take the first step, and the rest we will learn along the way. Some people live their whole lives without ever truly living. They merely exist, moving between what they must do and what they should do, forgetting what they once wanted, until one day they look back and realize they have lived 10, 20 years without anything really changing. Everything on the outside seems fine, the job, the house, even the smiles. But inside, a part of them has been silent for a long time. The part that once felt excitement for the world, that once believed life still had so much to offer. Passivity never arrives suddenly. It comes quietly, little by little. It begins the first time you pass up an opportunity and say, maybe later. Then next time, it becomes easier. The time after that, almost natural, until you forget what it feels like to truly choose. That's when you no longer control your life, but let it control you. And then, one morning just like any other, you wake up, look around, and realize nothing is wrong, but nothing feels right either. Everything is fine, yet nothing makes you feel alive. You've become so used to this feeling that you believe it's normal. You smile at others, say I'm fine, still post old photos to prove you're happy. But inside, there's an empty space quietly growing each day. The cruelest thing about passivity is that it doesn't hurt. It only numbs you. It keeps you stuck in between, not miserable enough to change, not happy enough to live fully. It makes you believe you still have time, when time is the one thing you can never get back. And one day, you realize you've lost your youth simply by waiting for the right moment. Life has no right moment. Some people spend their whole lives to realize that. Some realize it too late. But if you are hearing these words, maybe you still have time. The only question is, what will you do with it? When we stop taking action, we don't just stand still, we fall behind. Because the world never stops. Everything keeps moving, People are walking forward. Opportunities are fading. Old dreams are turning to dust. We think we're waiting to be ready, but in truth, we're waiting until we no longer dare. Maybe deep down, we already know. What we fear is not failure, but change itself. We fear leaving the familiar, fear losing control, fear facing the emptiness we've been avoiding. But the paradox is, only when we face our fear does life truly begin. Every journey starts with one moment of honesty. The moment you admit, I don't want to live like this anymore. That moment may be small, but it can move your entire life. No one is coming to save you. There is no magic other than your own choice. The choice to stop waiting and start moving. Because sometimes the only thing standing between you and the life you're meant to live is simply your own unmoving feet. Passivity is not born overnight. It is the result of thousands of times you tried but got hurt, of efforts that went unrecognized. Each time, a small part of you pulled back. At first, you thought you just needed a break, that you would come back and try again when the time was right. But that time kept slipping further away, until one day you no longer knew what true effort felt like. You became stable, calm, mature, words that sound positive but hide the quiet exhaustion of someone who once believed in good things and now only longs to feel safe. The human mind has a strange mechanism. When it gets hurt too many times, it teaches itself to stand still. Like in the famous experiment where a dog was trapped in a cage and endured repeated electric shocks until it stopped resisting. Even when the door was open, it lay still, not running, not escaping. Because in its mind, getting out was no longer an option. People are the same. After repeated failures, we start believing that effort is useless, that life has already decided our share. We stop fighting and only learn to endure. And we call that maturity. But if maturity only means learning to endure, aren't we living like breathing creatures whose fire has already gone out? We lose curiosity, spontaneity, and that reckless courage that once made us believe anything was possible. Now, we choose safety, not because we like it, but because we fear. We fear reliving old pain, fear being laughed at, fear not being enough. And so we build ourselves a new cage, the cage of comfort. Comfort is a sweet anesthetic. It makes you think you're living well when in truth, you're only avoiding pain. Humans are wired to seek safety. Since prehistoric times, our survival instinct has pushed us to avoid danger, wild beasts, hunger, cold. But the world today no longer holds those threats. It only holds subtler fears, the fear of failure, rejection, and not being loved. And we respond to those fears by hiding in our comfort zone, the stable job, the familiar relationship, the old habits, the predictable life. We call that stability, but stability is not always peace. Often, it is stagnation painted with a nice color. It's like a familiar room where everything is neatly arranged, but there's no air to breathe. Every morning, we wake up in that room, knowing exactly how the day will unfold, and still choose to stay, because leaving means facing the unknown. And no matter how educated we are, we still tremble before what we don't know. The trap of comfort is never loud. It comes in small ways. When you tell yourself you'll exercise tomorrow, then pull the blanket and sleep 10 more minutes. When you know you should leave a relationship that is run dry, but say it's not time yet. When you promise to start your own project but open social media to get inspiration instead. Each of these choices, however small, is a brick building the wall between you and the life you want. Ironically, because we fear instability so much, we end up living in constant unease. Absolute safety doesn't exist. Even if you stand still, life keeps changing. Everything around you, people, work, opportunities, keeps moving. And when you refuse to move, you don't keep stability. You lose the rhythm of the world. So when things finally change, you feel left behind. Not because others moved faster, but because you stopped for too long. Passivity takes many forms. It isn't always doing nothing. Sometimes it's doing everything except what truly matters. You stay busy all day, but don't move any closer to what you want. You clean, reply to emails, scroll through news, make calls, attend pointless meetings, all to avoid one thing: facing your fear. We're good at creating to-do lists just to escape the one thing that really matters. That's how passivity disguises itself as productivity. And at the end of the day, you feel exhausted but not alive. An emptiness seeps in, as if you missed something important but can't remember what it was. Yet the next morning, you do it all again, because it's easier that way. And day after day, you slowly forget that life once held endless possibilities. I once heard someone say a person can die at 20 but not be buried until 80. It sounds dramatic, but it's chillingly true. Because most of us, somewhere along the road of growing up, let a part of ourselves die. The part that dreamed, that believed in goodness, that wanted a life filled with meaning. But there's something few people talk about. Passivity doesn't only come from fear. It also comes from a false belief that we have time. We think we're still young, still have chances, still have tomorrow. So we let ourselves delay. But time shows mercy to no one. It passes, minute by minute, while we wait to feel ready. The truth is, no one has ever been ready for big things. People just begin, and that act of beginning is what makes them ready. When you look back, you'll see that the moments you're most proud of never began with certainty. They began with a little fear, a little doubt, but a step forward nonetheless. And the moments you regret, most often, came from silence, from waiting, from stepping back. If passivity is a silent thief, then comfort is its loyal accomplice. Together they make you forget that every day you don't move forward is a day you move backward. No one notices that while they're young, but when you finally wake up and look back, you'll see that those ordinary years were the very place where your dreams die. And if there's anything scarier than failure, it's living a life without risk. Because that means you never truly lived. Of course, we can always begin again. But only when we dare to face this truth, that nothing outside is holding us back, only ourselves. And that truth, though painful, is the first step toward freedom. There is always a price that passivity demands, and it is not paid in money or time, but in the meaning of life. No one realizes it right away. It begins with those empty mornings, when you no longer know why you wake up. You still work, still finish what needs to be done, but everything feels like an unconscious reaction. Life becomes a flat line, no peaks, no valleys. Everything is fine, and that very sense of fine is the sign of a soul slowly losing its fire. Viktor Frankl once wrote that what drives a person is not pleasure or power, but meaning. When we lose the sense that our life has a reason to exist, we begin to drift, doing things just to fill the space, not to create something real. And nothing steals meaning faster than waiting. You can endure pain as long as you know why you endure it. But when you hurt without reason, when you live without knowing why, that's when your heart begins to grow cold. Ask yourself, when was the last time you truly felt alive? Not when things went smoothly, but when you stepped into something that scared you yet made you feel you were growing. That feeling, the fast heartbeat, the quick breath, the sweaty palms, is the pulse of real life. But because we fear failure, we avoid it. We choose safety. And in doing so, we choose to lose the part of us that wants to live fully. There is a strange paradox. We long to feel alive, yet we avoid everything that makes us feel alive. We say we want change, yet fear the first step. We crave freedom, yet build fences around ourselves with habits and control. So we stay in between, not miserable enough to let go, not happy enough to move forward. And then we soothe ourselves with the easiest lie. I'm just waiting for the right time. But there will never be a perfect time. There is no tomorrow that feels just right, no moment when you are fully ready. Real change always begins in chaos. When you are still afraid, still uncertain, but take a step anyway. Act first. Faith will follow. Meaning is not something given. It is something made through every choice, every small action. And then, somewhere within the quiet current of life, you hear a small voice inside. Very small. A voice that whispers, there is more than this. That voice is the deepest part of you, the part that has never truly disappeared. It is not loud, not demanding. It only waits for you to listen. Every time you feel lost or empty, it is not because life has no meaning, but because you have drifted away from that voice. You have let passivity speak for you for too long. Have you ever asked yourself, if today were your last day, would you regret not doing something? Not the big things, but the small ones you keep promising for later. Writing the letter you never sent, calling the person you miss, starting the project you once dreamed of, We are not defeated by great losses, but by the things we never began. Each time you choose silence, you lose a piece of the life that could have been. But there is something even more important. Passivity doesn't just kill meaning, it kills connection with others and with yourself. When you stop acting, you stop feeling. You are no longer truly present in conversations, in meals, in touch. Everything becomes halfway. You see life passing before your eyes, but it's as if through a thick glass. You still smile, still talk, but deep down you know you are only pretending. Sometimes, in the quietest moments, you can hear that emptiness echo. In the middle of the night, when everyone else is asleep, you open your eyes, stare at the ceiling, and ask, "What am I doing with my life?" That question is not your enemy. It is a call to awaken. But most of us, instead of listening, try to silence it. We reach for our phones, play music, watch videos, anything to avoid facing the emptiness inside. We fear silence because in silence, we must face the truth we've been avoiding, that we are living below our potential. Yet from that awareness, a door can open. No one finds meaning by running away from emptiness. Only by looking into it can we discover what inside us longs to live again. Everyone has a sleeping part within, the part that once dreamed, once felt eager, once was foolish but sincere. Once you touch that part again, everything begins to change. You don't need a grand plan, just one small action, one promise to yourself: I will not let my life fade away in silence. If these words make something inside you stir, a feeling both sad and real, let it stay for a while. Share it, speak it, or write it down. Because sometimes, one small act of sharing can reach someone out there who needs to hear this. Maybe they are as stuck as you once were. Maybe through your story, they will take the first step you're still hesitating to take. Meaning does not come to those who wait, but to those who walk through fear. Every small step you take, even trembling, leads you out of the blur of your old life. And one day, you will realize something simple. You don't need to have all the answers to begin. You just need to begin to find the answers. Life always offers a second chance, but it only appears in the moment you decide to take it. If you feel lost, don't see it as failure. See it as an invitation to return to yourself, to a meaningful life, to the part of you left behind long ago. And maybe, with just one small decision today, everything can begin to change. Humans carry a deep belief that once we find comfort, we will be happy. But few realize that comfort is the softest trap the mind ever built. It keeps us sitting still in things that no longer bring joy, simply because we fear leaving what feels familiar. A job without passion, but stable. A relationship that has gone cold, but feels safe. A city we've outgrown but can't let go of. Comfort doesn't hurt us. It just makes us forget that we deserve more than this. Comfort is a silent state. It doesn't hurt. It doesn't pressure. It doesn't rush. It quietly makes us lose our rhythm. Like water warming slowly in a pot. No one notices until it's too late. Each day, we choose the easier path. To stay instead of leave. To stay quiet instead of speak. To delay instead of begin. Then one day, we no longer recognize who we are. Only that life seems smaller now. Everything is just enough. Enough to exist, but not enough to live. The trap of comfort works on our oldest fear, the fear of the unknown. The human brain still carries its ancient instinct to choose safety over change, the familiar over discovery. Long ago, that instinct helped our ancestors survive the wilderness. But today, in a world without wild beasts, that same instinct has become a chain. It tells us, don't leave this job. At least it pays the bills. Don't end this relationship. Even if the love is gone, loneliness could be worse. It speaks softly, persuasively, making us believe that staying still is wisdom. But really, it is the wisdom of fear. Some people live their whole lives without ever feeling their hearts beat for something greater than fear. They do work they hate, just to pay bills. Stay with people they no longer love, just to avoid being alone. Live in homes that no longer feel like theirs, just because they are familiar. They think they are keeping themselves safe, but in truth, they are losing the most alive part of who they are, the part that dares to feel, to believe, to take risks. The irony is that the more we cling to comfort, the emptier we feel, because the human soul was never meant to stay still. It was born to reach, to learn, to grow. Every time you step outside what's familiar, you don't just discover the world, you discover yourself. But when you stay too long in your comfort zone, you don't just stop moving, you shrink. You make yourself small enough to fit the limited space you've chosen to stay in. Think back to the last time you did something that scared you. Maybe it was your first interview, leaving someone who once meant everything, or simply saying out loud what you'd been hiding inside. You trembled, you doubted yourself. But once you crossed that line, you felt light. Because in that moment, you were alive. Not because you knew you would succeed, but because you acted even while unsure. That is what being alive feels like. Imperfect, but full. No one has ever achieved anything great by staying comfortable. Every path toward growth passes through discomfort. No artist has ever created something remarkable while feeling safe. No leader has ever changed anything without taking a risk. No one has ever found themselves without first getting lost. Comfort only sustains the old. Only uncertainty gives birth to something new. But don't misunderstand. Stepping out of your comfort zone doesn't mean throwing yourself into chaos. It simply means daring to take one step beyond your limits. Sometimes it's as simple as saying no to what you no longer want, as pausing the chase for others' approval, as sitting down, looking inward, and admitting that you no longer want to live the same way. Even that small moment can be enough to set your inner world in motion. The truth is, there is no growth without loss. Every time you change, an old version of you must die, and that hurts. But that pain is necessary. It's the proof that you're growing. What you truly fear is not change itself, but that small death, the death of habits, of familiar safeties, of the person you once were. But only when you let those parts fall away can you become light enough to move into the next chapter of your life. Maybe we only truly live when we accept discomfort as part of the journey. When we understand that fear is not a signal to stop, but a sign we're moving in the right direction. Because everything meaningful in life demands that we walk through darkness before we reach the light. If you're feeling stuck right now, it may not be a sign of failure, but a sign that your soul is ready for a shift. Like a seed beneath the soil, when it begins to feel pressure, it's preparing to break through the shell and rise. The feeling of suffocation isn't the end, it's the beginning. Someone once said, "Comfort is the enemy of progress." But maybe we can also say, courage is the cure for comfort. Just one small action, one phone call, one step, one honest word can be enough to crack the shell of the safety you've built around yourself. And through that crack, light begins to enter. Because in the end, happiness is not the feeling of peace, but the feeling of being alive. And sometimes, living means walking into the unknown, carrying your fear with you to find yourself on the other side of comfort. Breaking free from the loop of passivity doesn't require a grand plan. It begins with a single moment. The moment you stop waiting for inspiration and start taking action, even the smallest one. That action doesn't need to be perfect. It just needs to be real. Like turning on a light in a dark room, you can't chase away all the darkness in a second, but one beam of light already changes everything. The problem is, most of us never switch on the light. We stand still, analyzing, calculating, thinking, until time slips away and the opportunity fades. Mel Robbins once spoke of a simple rule, the 5-second rule. When you have an intention to write, to call, to walk, to speak what's in your heart, count down in your mind. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and do it. Because if you give your brain more time, it will find 1,000 reasons to delay. The brain was made to protect, not to grow. It wants to keep you safe, even when safety is slowly draining your spirit. The 5-second rule isn't just a psychological trick. It's a way to outsmart your own defense system. One small movement, enough to create momentum. The truth is, most great changes in life don't start with inspiration, but with discipline. Inspiration comes later, as a reward, but you must act first. We often confuse the two. We think we need inspiration to act, but inspiration is the child of action, not its parent. Like an artist who doesn't wait for inspiration to paint, they paint. And inspiration comes when the brush meets the color. In the same way, life begins to move when you begin to move. Discipline is what keeps you going when faith wavers, when results haven't arrived, when no one is cheering you on. It's a thin but strong thread that ties you to what you truly want. And the good news is, discipline is not an inborn trait, it's a habit. You don't need to be strong from the start. You just need to begin with something small. What you do today doesn't have to be big. It only has to be in the right direction. One small action each day, repeated, will create a power you never expected. James Clear once wrote, "If you get 1% better every day, in a year, you'll be 37 times better." In the same way, passivity also compounds, only in the opposite direction. Every time you hesitate, every time you say, "I'll do it tomorrow," you're investing 1% into delay. And one day, you'll find yourself exhausted, not because you've done too much, but because you've gone too long without doing what truly matters. Face this truth clearly. No one steals your dreams, but your own hesitation. There is no enemy more dangerous than waiting. Every minute you let fear lead is a minute you lose the chance to rewrite your story. But the miracle is, one single action can change the course of your entire life. Writing the first sentence of a book, sending an apology email, or simply standing up instead of sitting there thinking some more. We often tell ourselves, "I just need more motivation." But motivation doesn't fall from the sky. It's born when you see yourself move forward, even a little. That feeling, the sense of "I did something," makes your brain release dopamine, the chemical of happiness. That's why people who act are so full of energy. They don't wait for energy, they create it. The world doesn't reward those with the best ideas, but those who dare to turn ideas into action. An unfinished painting never gets displayed. A song unwritten remains silence. An apology never spoken never heals. And your life, without action, remains only a draft. Passivity doesn't just live in big decisions. It hides in small ones. When you mean to exercise but check your phone first. When you mean to write but go make another cup of coffee. When you mean to say something important but just smile instead. Each time you do that, you train yourself to stand still. And the opposite is also true. Every small act, however trivial, is how you teach yourself to move forward. Start with what's closest. If your project feels too big, give it the first 5 minutes. If you want to run, just put on your shoes and step outside. If you want to change your lifestyle, start by tidying your desk. Small actions lead to bigger ones, because they send a message to your brain. I am someone who acts, and that is the deepest change of all. Not changing your plans, but changing how you see yourself. No one can stay inspired forever, but anyone can keep a habit, and that habit will save you on the hardest days. When you stop believing in your dream, discipline will believe for you. When you no longer feel strong, habit will carry you through. Over time, you'll realize that true strength doesn't lie in emotion, but in consistency. The world is full of intelligent people, but only a few take action, and that's what makes the difference. Not that they're better, but that they start while others are still planning. They understand that progress doesn't come from great ideas, but from never stopping, even if each step is small. Think about it. If you took just one small action every day, one small step toward what you want, how different would you be in a year? You don't need a miracle. You don't need a guide. Only one decision, not to let passivity win again. And then, as you begin to feel that rhythm of movement, you'll understand there is no perfect moment other than this one. There is no better tomorrow. Only today I begin. Because sometimes, every great change in life starts from something simple. One deep breath, one countdown, and one step forward. Sometimes, what keeps people from taking action is not laziness, but a quiet belief that this is just who I am. That harmless-sounding thought is the invisible lock that keeps you stuck where you are. We call it ego paralysis. When you begin to identify with your limits instead of your possibilities, you say, "I'm not disciplined. I'm not the type who takes risks. I'm not good at starting new things." Each statement is a rope tightening around your neck, and little by little, you begin to believe that change isn't possible for you. No one is born with a fixed identity. Everything is just a story we tell ourselves to make sense of who we are. But some stories are so old, repeated so many times, that they become what we call truth. You once failed when you tried to start something, so you believe you're not persistent. You were once rejected, so you believe you're not lovable. You once gave up halfway, so you think you lack commitment. But none of these define you. They are only fragments of memory from a person who was once afraid. If you look closely, you'll see that the self, the thing you call me, is really a collection of memories, fears, and reactions. It isn't fixed. It's always changing, And because it changes, you can recreate it every day. When you take a new action, even a small one, you are rewriting your story. When you step into something that scares you, you're showing your mind, I am not that old version of me anymore. That is the key to breaking free from paralysis. Act not to achieve a result, but to shape an identity. Instead of saying, I want to be confident, ask, what would a confident person do right now? Then do that, even just a small part of it. When you begin to behave like the person you want to become, your mind will gradually accept that new version as real. Every action is a vote for your new self. One vote won't change the outcome, but hundreds, thousands of votes will. True change doesn't come from setting distant goals, but from choosing to live like someone capable of reaching them. You don't need to wait for self-belief before you act. It is the action that creates belief. You can't think your way into becoming someone new. You can only act your way there. Because every time you act, you're sending a message to your brain. I am this person now, not the old one. And neuroscience has shown something fascinating. The brain cannot tell the difference between who you are and who you are becoming. When you act in a new direction, your brain begins forming new neural connections, strengthening that new identity. That means you don't have to wait to believe before you act. Act first, and belief will follow. But change isn't only held back by habits or beliefs. It's also blocked by emotions. Taking action means facing discomfort, anxiety, shame, insecurity, fear of failure. Those feelings are not signs that you're on the wrong path. They're proof that you're crossing the boundary of your comfort zone. When your brain senses risk, it activates the amygdala, the fear center, and sends a signal to stop. That's a survival instinct, not destiny. The problem is, most of us don't understand that. We think if we feel fear, it means we're not ready. But in truth, the moment you feel fear is the moment you're standing at the doorway of something new. Fear is just the last curtain before progress. Remember this, you don't need to get rid of fear to act. You only need to learn how to act in spite of it. The first time you do something different, your body will react. Your heart races, your throat dries, your hands tremble. But don't call that weakness. See it as a sign of awakening. Because only when you step outside your safety zone does your body respond that way. And if you're brave enough to walk through it, on the other side of fear is freedom. One day, you'll realize that confidence doesn't come from not being afraid, but from knowing fear no longer controls you. Discipline doesn't come from always being motivated, but from doing what matters even when you're not. Strength doesn't come from avoiding pain, but from knowing you can rise again after it. You may have heard this before, but let it truly sink in this time. You do not rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of your systems. Goals are just a compass, but systems, the small habits, the consistent actions, are the road itself. And that system begins with how you see yourself. If you see yourself as weak, you'll act like you are. If you see yourself as someone learning to be strong, you'll act like someone growing stronger. Changing your identity isn't about creating a new person. It's about returning to your original self, the one untouched by fear. When you were a child, you acted without worrying about judgment. You spoke your mind, did what you wanted. Then time, failure, and others' opinions taught you to shrink. But that courage is still there, waiting for you to call it back. And when you begin to live as the person you want to become, not the person you used to be, you'll see that action doesn't just change results. It transforms your inner reality. Someone who acts differently, feels differently, thinks differently, and eventually becomes different. So, start rewriting your story. No big declarations, no perfection needed. Just choose one action each day that the person you want to become would take. One day, you'll look back and realize you never had to search for a better version of yourself. You only had to stop living as the old one. True freedom doesn't begin with excitement, but with a hard truth. No one is coming to save you. Life doesn't owe you anything, and no one else is responsible for the things you don't dare to do. Maturity doesn't come when we become better, but when we realize that every result in our life, good or bad, is our own choice. That is radical responsibility, the only force powerful enough to break the deep-rooted passivity that has held you for years. Realizing this hurts at first, because it leaves you nowhere to hide. You can't blame circumstances, your parents, your ex, or society. Every time you do, you hand them control over your life. But when you say, everything that's happened is my choice, even unconsciously, You take that control back. And in that very moment, you are no longer a victim. You become the one holding the wheel. Radical responsibility is not a burden, it's liberation. Because when you stop waiting for someone else to change your situation, you can begin to change yourself. It doesn't mean blaming yourself. It means owning it. Admitting, yes, I let myself stay stuck, but I'm also the one who can move forward. From that moment, the old energy, once locked behind fear and regret, begins to flow again. Many people think they need a grand plan, a detailed map to change their lives. But in truth, it starts with one simple principle. Action creates clarity, not the other way around. We keep waiting for things to be clearer, more certain, before we move. But certainty only appears after we take the step. No path reveals itself while you're standing still. Only when you move do the stones appear beneath your feet. Jeff Bezos once said, "If you wait until you have 100% of the information to decide, you'll always be too late." Life doesn't reward the ones who know best, but the ones who dare first. Even with 70% of the data, they move. Because action brings experience, experience brings understanding, and understanding shows the right direction. The one who waits to understand will never truly understand. What stops most people from acting isn't lack of information, but fear of failure. In our minds, failure means embarrassment, loss of worth, loss of hope. But the truth is, failure isn't the opposite of success. It's part of it. No one great has ever lived without falling. Thomas Edison once said, "I have not failed. I've just found 10,000 ways that won't work." That's not naive optimism. It's truth. Every failure is an experiment, a piece of data. Only when you're willing to try enough times do you learn how to succeed. Successful people aren't different from you in talent, but in their willingness to pay the price of mistakes. They don't see each fall as an end, but as movement. They don't ask, "How do I avoid failure?" but "What can I learn from this?" And they understand that doing nothing is the real failure, because it leaves you with the most painful thing of all, regret. When you begin to live with radical responsibility, everything in your life changes perspective. Instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" you start asking, "What can I do with this?" The first question makes you powerless. The second gives you power. Because life isn't fair to anyone, it simply reflects how much responsibility we're willing to take. The more you're willing to own, the wider life opens to you. And most importantly, your actions don't need to be perfect. Let go of the idea that you need a better plan or more preparation. Perfection is just another form of passivity, a clever excuse to avoid movement. The clarity, confidence, and inspiration you're waiting for will only come after you begin, not before. Train yourself to decide faster. Each time you face a choice, don't let yourself overthink. The longer you hesitate, the more time you give fear to convince you to stop. Set limits. For small things, decide within 5 seconds. For bigger ones, within 5 minutes. For major ones, within 24 hours. Then act. Whatever the outcome, you've already moved forward. No one acts without fear, but those who change their lives are the ones who act with it. They don't wait for fear to vanish. They learn to carry it along. And that action, that trembling but real step, is what separates those who live actively from those who live passively. One day, you'll look back and realize there were never truly right or wrong decisions, only decisions made and decisions missed. Every action, whether it led to success or failure, gave you something, because at least you moved closer to yourself. Life is fair in its own way. It rewards those who choose, not those who just think. It gives chances to those who try, not to those who wait. Every choice you postpone today quietly closes a door. And someday, you'll see that the real tragedy isn't not knowing what you want, but knowing exactly what you want and still doing nothing. Remember this: time won't wait for you to find your courage again. Everything you want, change, meaning, freedom, lives on the other side of action, and no one but you can take you there. There is no perfect moment, no miracle. There is only one choice, repeated every day. Keep waiting or start living. Because in the end, what defines your life is not the dreams you have, but what you dare to do while you're still afraid. Thank you for staying with me until the very end of this story. If this message touched your heart, please give it a like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell so you'll never miss the next journey we take together. Your support means the world to me.